The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and despair. The fluorescent lights above hummed relentlessly, their cold glow washing over Ava's pale skin. Tubes and wires ran from her body like small, invasive rivers, IVs dripping sluggishly, a cardiac monitor beeping a relentless rhythm that echoed the hollow emptiness of the space. Her fingers twitched occasionally against the sterile sheets, each movement sending a sharp sting from the needle in her arm. Outside the window, the city pulsed with life, but inside, time had slowed to a cruel crawl. It had been 3 days. 3 long, silent days with no visitors. Her phone lay beside her, mostly ignored until the monotony and the quiet desperation nudged her toward it. When she finally unlocked it, a notification from Instagram caught her eye. Her heart twisted, not from the beeping around her, but from the image that stared back. The post showed them. Smiling, perfect, laughter frozen in pixels. "Family day without the drama," the caption read. Their faces were bright and untroubled, every like a silent declaration of a life continuing without her. Ava's chest tightened, not with anger, not yet, but with a cold, crystalline clarity. She traced their faces with a finger, noting the small details. The way her brother's arm rested around their cousin, the way her mother's smile didn't reach her eyes. She felt a strange detachment, as though watching a play she had never auditioned for. The irony was sharp and unmistakable. For 3 days, no one had checked on her. No footsteps in the corridor, no whispers of concern. And now, only when she was tethered to monitors, only when she was unreachable in the most vulnerable way, did the illusion of family resurface. Ava didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply watched the likes climb, counting them like a ledger of absence and performance. Then, almost as if the universe had a sense of timing, her phone vibrated violently on the bedside table. 74 missed calls. Messages flooding in. "We need you. Can you come?" The hollow certainty in her chest tightened further. The world she had been denied for days now demanded her attention, but she was no longer naive to the pattern. "I didn't cry. I just watched the likes climb, wondering when family stopped meaning love and started meaning performance. But then everything changed, just not the way they expected." Ava had perfected the art of survival in plain sight. By day, she was relentless at green tech, her keyboard clattering like a metronome, deadlines looming like jagged cliffs. By night, she carried the invisible weight of a family that depended on her with near-military precision. Every paycheck, every bonus, every extra hour was quietly rerouted to patch holes she had long stopped counting. She was exhausted, but she couldn't afford to look it. Not to herself, not to them. Robert, her older brother, hadn't held a steady job in 7 years. Every text from him was a polite question disguised as casual conversation. "Hey, can you cover the utilities again?" And she did, every single time, because refusing felt like shattering something bigger than money. Elena, their mother, smiled and nodded, never stopping to consider how her enabling had become Ava's invisible chain. Marissa, the failed influencer, posted filtered perfection to her thousands of followers while her credit card balances spiraled. "Just this month, Ava. I swear." Marissa would plead, and Ava would cover it. Peyton, the quiet one, slid into her inbox occasionally with half-hearted apologies, borrowing yet again, expecting repayment in the form of silence. And all the while, the family photos went online. Smiling faces, sunsets, laughter frozen in filters. Public perception was flawless. Private reality was a ledger of debts and emotional exhaustion. Ava's work ethic masked more than competence. It masked survival mode, a life lived on constant alert, patched together with unpaid bills and unspoken resentment. She had learned to say yes automatically, as if saying no might fracture the world she so desperately kept afloat. Grandpa Joe had tried to warn her once, in his own gruff way, waving his old accountant's hands as he spoke. "You can't audit love, Ava. No ledger, no balance sheet, no spreadsheet can measure it. And if you keep trying, you'll bankrupt yourself." She had laughed then, waving off the caution like a distant storm. Fear of confrontation, fear of being the bad daughter, kept her trapped in the cycle, spinning tirelessly to keep everyone else afloat. Even now, Ava could still feel the quiet sting of that fear, the way it had sunk into her bones. Every payment made, every favor granted, had been a reminder that her value was measured in dollars, not in presence, not in care. From the outside, we looked perfect. Online, Marissa called us proof that love is everything. She posted that right after I'd paid Mom's car insurance. Love apparently had a balance due. The sterile hum of the hospital room had changed since Ava had first arrived. The machines still beeped, but the tension that had coiled through her body was slowly unspooling. Her limbs, once heavy with 4 lines and fatigue, now felt like instruments of a new resolve. Recovery wasn't just physical, it was the awakening of something she had long buried. Clarity. When Grandpa Joe arrived, it was with surgical calm. No judgment, no unnecessary chatter. Just the quiet authority of someone who had seen the mechanics of family life laid bare long before she had. He sat beside her, sliding a laptop across the tray table. "You thought it was love. They thought it was obligation," he said. His voice low and steady, almost soothing. And then the audit began. Together, they traced every auto transfer, every recurring payment, every bill that had been silently shouldered in her name. Each number told a story. A borrowed sum here, an unpaid credit card there, a utility bill masked under her generosity. The spreadsheet stretched before her like a map, an X-ray of her life under invisible chains. There was clarity now, surgical and unflinching. She could see it all. She could plan. The first act of defiance came quietly. "Call to the bank." Ava's voice, firm and unshakable, cancelled the first set of automatic payments. One by one, she severed the financial ties that had bound her. Each click, each confirmation was a small inhale of freedom, a reclaimed breath after years of drowning under obligation. And then the messages started. Floods of texts and calls, a sudden panic that mirrored nothing of the calm indifference they had maintained for days. "Why isn't the rent paid? We need the car insurance. You can't do this." For the first time, Ava didn't respond. She simply watched the chaos unfold from the vantage point of control. "He handed me a spreadsheet like a map out of hell. "Tomorrow," he said, "we start with the bank." That's when I realized. Silence wasn't surrender. It was the sound of me taking back control. Ava had thought moving to Grandpa Joe's house would buy her a little peace. She was wrong. The calls started almost immediately, a relentless tide that refused to ebb. Her mother's voice on voicemail was saccharine at first. "Just worried about the mortgage, sweetie." But the undertone was razor-sharp, an invisible whip. Marissa's texts were a different breed. Crying emojis, accusations, threats disguised as cries for help. Peyton's attempts at diplomacy. "I'm not like them, Ava, I swear," felt hollow in the face of coordinated desperation. Each message was a tug on her guilt, a reminder of the role she had been forced to play for so long. Then the ambush came. Marissa posted a video, carefully curated, framed to perfection. Ava's face appeared in the corner as the villain, the money-grabbing daughter, the cold one who took everything. The narrative was manipulative and precise. Within hours, strangers online had judged her, liked, shared, and typed vitriol as if she had committed an unforgivable crime. The internet can be a court without justice, and Ava was sentenced before she had a chance to speak. But Grandpa Joe had anticipated the storm. 3 calm, methodical phone calls later, he had secured every document. Bank statements, transfer records, signed bills, proof of fraudulent requests. While the world saw her as greedy, the real ledger of events had been meticulously preserved. He smiled as he laid the papers out, like a general surveying the battlefield. "The truth has receipts," he said quietly, almost to himself. Ava could feel the tension in her chest finally start to loosen. With the documentation in hand, they filed a cease and desist order, legally halting the family's manipulations. Every threat, every fake plea, every attempt to guilt her was countered by hard, unassailable evidence. Ava didn't need to respond to Marissa's crying texts or her mother's guilt-laden voicemails. The power had shifted, subtly but irrevocably. The video's caption read, "Sometimes blood doesn't mean family." Strangers called her ungrateful, labeled her cruel. But Grandpa Joe just smiled, calm and unswayed. "The truth has receipts," he said again. "Let's file them." And for the first time in years, Ava felt the distant, exhilarating weight of freedom. The envelope hit the doormat like a warning siren. Ava tore it open to discover a conservatorship petition, filed in court by her own family. They claimed she was mentally unfit, unable to manage her finances, incapable of making sound decisions. For a moment, her chest tightened, the familiar weight of their control threatening to return. But Grandpa Joe's calm presence was a tether in the storm. He had anticipated this move months ago. Every document was prepared. Updated medical records, a preemptive trust protecting her assets, meticulously detailed financial statements. While they plotted to seize control, he had quietly built an unassailable legal fortress around her. "They're not used to someone walking away before the money runs out," he reminded her. His tone a quiet blend of amusement and pride. The next escalation came in person. Peyton appeared at her apartment, a mix of defiance and desperation in his eyes. Security intercepted him before he could step inside. He pounded the door, called her name, pleaded. Every tactic they had used in private now played out in public. But the locked doors, the professional barriers, and the legal preparations turned his ambush into impotent spectacle. Marissa, undeterred by the failed in-person attack, posted another video. This time it was carefully framed. Ava as the mentally unstable daughter, crying and confused, supposedly proving the family's claims. But the internet had changed its lens. Screenshots from months prior emerged. Marissa's family day posts, the carefully staged smiling photos that had hidden the debts, the constant pleas for Ava's money. Suddenly, her narrative crumbled under the weight of her own history. The public that had once judged Ava now turned on Marissa, dissecting inconsistencies with ruthless precision. Within hours, their carefully curated online empire, a lifetime of performative love and curated perfection, collapsed. The crying videos, the staged family smiles, the social media breadcrumbs meant to guilt Ava, all became evidence of manipulation, entitlement and fraud. Their public image disintegrated as quickly as their legal gambit failed. "They tried to have me declared unfit. But Grandpa Joe had already checkmated them 3 moves ago. They're not used to someone walking away before the money runs out." And for the first time Ava felt it. The exhilarating, unshakable relief of being untouchable. The courier knocked with quiet insistence, and Ava opened the door to find a thick envelope, its paper heavy and ominous. Inside was her father's latest attempt at control, a handwritten will, rewritten in bold strokes, threatening to disinherit her unless she reconciled with the family on their terms. She held it for a moment, the words blurred by incredulous laughter. The absurdity was almost comical. They still believed she wanted anything from them. She leaned back against the edge of the table, letting the sound of her own laughter fill the apartment. After everything, years of debt, manipulation and silent servitude, they still misunderstood her entirely. She didn't want their approval, their money, or their staged affection. All of it had been a change she no longer recognized as hers. Her attorney's response was brief, precise, and utterly final. A formal waiver of all estate rights, coupled with a permanent no-contact directive. The documents were filed, stamped, and legally binding. Ava read them once, then set them aside, feeling something she hadn't in years. Relief. No anger, no lingering guilt, just a quiet, expansive calm. The legal severance was clean, permanent, and undeniable. Packing was methodical, but lighter than she expected. She folded clothes, stacked books, and tucked away memories with a sense of ceremony. Each item placed in a box felt like a weight lifted, a thread cut from the tangle of obligations that had defined her life for so long. She glanced at Grandpa Joe, who had quietly supervised every step, his eyes twinkling with approval and quiet pride. "Maybe somewhere quieter," she murmured, almost to herself, imagining a life not tethered to expectation or manipulation. A life where silence wasn't a threat, and absence wasn't a punishment. Where freedom was not only possible, but hers to live fully. He thought disinheriting me was punishment. He didn't realize I'd already inherited the only thing that mattered. My freedom. The rain had cleared by the time Ava and Grandpa Joe left the city behind. The tires of the car crunched over damp gravel as they ascended into the mountains, the air shifting to a crisp, pine-scented clarity. Every mile felt like shedding a layer of years-long tension, the urban chaos fading behind them. Silence stretched wide, unbroken except for the occasional call of a distant bird or the whisper of wind through evergreens. The cabin appeared like a promise. Its wooden walls smelled faintly of cedar and old warmth. A small kitchen, a roaring stove, a balcony that overlooked snow-capped peaks. Here, time moved differently. Ava brewed coffee, steam curling into the cool air, and settled at a desk by the window. Her work was her own now, remote and deliberate, scheduled around her life rather than dictated by anyone else's needs or demands. Each email she sent, each document she completed, was done on her terms. Messages still arrived. Strangers questioning her family posts, distant relatives probing, some remnants of guilt-tripping, but she didn't answer. Grandpa Joe, perched in a chair across from her, finally spoke with the quiet authority she had come to trust. "You did it. You broke the cycle." His words, simple and true, carried more weight than any legal victory or public vindication. Ava realized that silence was no longer a punishment. It was her choice, a border she had drawn around her life. Walking away hadn't been surrender. It had been strength, a reclaiming of herself in full. Here in the mountains she was just Ava. Alive. Unknown. Free. That I used to think silence meant defeat. Now I know it's a border, a kind of peace that doesn't need permission. If you've ever been called selfish for putting yourself first, this is your reminder. Choosing peace isn't betrayal. It's survival. Share your story below. This section wraps the arc, emphasizing freedom, reflection, and empowerment, while leaving the reader with a strong, relatable CTA.